No redemption, there is no conversation. It is whatever we say about you is truth, and you're done.
One friend did it with us. He heard our side of the story and he was just like, oh wow, this is completely understandable. I see where you guys are coming from. Then he writes us later on, we weren't the right type of black friend.
Breaks on that for a while. I don't know how much out of this time I need right now. I need to clear my head. I haven't been feeling myself. I think it's time for me to take a break. Like I just feel like I'm kind of floating without any purpose right now.
They brought up my boyfriend. They wanted to know if he was white, because if he was, that would have made sense to them of why I was acting like this. Seeing people automatically say, okay, the reason you have a problem with this is because you're racist is an issue for me. I said, we need to stop doing this. I'm talking in a matter of 24 hours, I became over the course of 4 days, I had more racism towards me from other people that looked like me than in my entire existence on this planet. What's the next step once they realize I can't, attack someone on social media and make them disappear, so what do we gotta do now? Is physical assault okay?
And I just see like these pools of blood. And I'm like, okay, I'm panicking now.
Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of Chad O. Jackson Live. I'm here with my good friend Graeme Wilson, the director of the film, the trailer that you just saw there, called Gothix. How are you today, Graeme?
I'm doing really well. It's been a crazy grind to get a lot of this done, and we're here.
Nice. The film looks amazing. I can't wait to see it. I actually saw, I guess, one of the first or early drafts of it, and I thought to myself, man, this was the making of a really good film. Like, what gave you the idea to make this one?
Yeah, well, it came from a place of, I wouldn't say need, maybe a spiritual need. I had a corporate gig, a corporate client that was our biggest client that we'd ever had for our company, Small Media Large, and the client was literally just going to be filming the things for us, filming the content for this commercial, this series of videos we were going to do, and we were just going to edit it. So we get the footage for these videos, and they're basically asking us to like edit together some stuff with some a culturally current bent, some transgender things. And I said I couldn't do that. I basically offered to do all of the videos for them that wasn't that video in particular, the transgender one. I said I can do everything. I just can't do that. Ended up losing that job because of it. I don't know if our company's blacklisted because of it, but yeah, not a good situation. But after I lost that corporate client, my thought was whatever it is that I do next, I want it to be something that matters. And I had discovered Gothix and her YouTube videos like 2 weeks before that. And I was so captivated by this chick. She was just not what I was anticipating at all in regards to the way that she thought. And so I spent like the next week just reaching out to her and asking, hey, I want to make a documentary about you. You down? And it took a little convincing, but she eventually agreed. So here we are.
So what drew you to Gothix initially, like her content? Like what drew you to it originally? And the reason I ask that is because it's like I know, like, because I've met Vanessa, like I met Gothix whenever you guys flew down here for the Uncle Tom 2 premiere, and she, just from my own perspective, is one of those people, like one of those rare people that you come across who is like a force within herself. Like, she's funny, she's charismatic, she's a good conversationalist. Like, she just kind of has the it factor. But like, to be honest with you, because I don't really spend a whole lot of time on the internet, believe it or not, I really didn't know who she was until you had connected with Justin, the director of Uncle Tom Part 2, and made him aware of the fact that you were making this film about Gothix. And then like looking into her content, like I found myself just watching video after video after video. Like, what was it about her that drew you in?
Yeah, thanks be to God, to the YouTube algorithm for once in my life that just one of her videos was recommended to me on YouTube, and the title of the video was "White Privilege is a Crutch," which is a pretty like ambiguous title. It doesn't really tell you what it's about. But I saw her face is on the thumbnail, and it's this black woman with the side shave cut and piercings and tattoos, and a very it looks like liberal, a pretty serious liberal. And with an ambiguous title like that, I was thinking, okay, this video is just going to be talking about how I'm a villain for the color of my skin. And but I was sort of sitting there like debating whether or not I was going to click on it. And I decided, I want to hear what she has to say. What's the argument here? And I clicked on it, and it was nothing what I was expecting. And I felt the power of that it was nothing that I was expecting. The fact that my expectations were subverted so aggressively is where I saw the power in it. You don't have to look a certain way to hold a particular opinion, which is something that you should believe. But that's one of the reasons why I found it to be powerful. But as I kept on going through all of her videos, it wasn't just that she was saying things that I agreed with. It was that she was saying them well. That she was saying them in a very concise, coherent, she understood the arguments, and she understood the positions and spoke on them so well. And I was like, who is this woman? This is crazy.
Yeah. So you guys released a second trailer today. I wanted to play that for everyone. Watch.
Yeah.
Disney has found the new Ariel,
taking on the iconic role and becoming the first black Ariel.
Ariel, the Little Mermaid, is going to be black. Drown mad about it.
White people are big mad about a black woman portraying Ariel. Racist ass behavior needs to be called out.
I guess Ariel is of Norwegian descent, or is it Swedish or something?
Guys,
it's
let's
time
go.
for something different.
Seeing people automatically say, okay, the reason you have a problem with this is because you're racist is an issue for me.
I always thought the same way. Like me, I'm a big comic book fan. To me, what comes first is a great character before their ethnicity, because that's not what defines you.
I chimed in, I said, we need to stop doing this. None of the messages and DMs or comments I got were actually constructive. Everything was, I was trying to appease the white folks. I'm talking in a matter of 24 hours, I became an anti-black streamer who hates black women, who supports racists and white supremacists, spreads harmful rhetoric for the black community.
I think a lot of people cut her loose today, and hey, people gave you the rope.
She be putting on whole ass minstrel shows.
And it's sad because I used to like her.
They would chat while I'm live to persuade my viewers to unfollow me and stop supporting me because I was quote unquote an anti-black.
Despite me taking sporadic days off here and there, I think it's time for me to take a break from this cloud that's happening right now, because I don't like the feeling.
So why was it important to release that trailer today?
So primarily for the sake of The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
That the fact that this whole cancellation, for those of you who don't know, Gothix was canceled back in July of 2019 because of the casting choice of Ariel for the live action rendition of The Little Mermaid. And the fact that it was announced that long ago and it only just released back in May 26th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We started this documentary 2 years ago. So 2 years after her cancellation, and then 2 years into the making of the documentary, we, are getting ready to get it out there, get it released. Because The Little Mermaid was important to the story, we wanted to try and hit close to the release of The Little Mermaid. So that was the importance of getting that out today, trying to capitalize on the fact that this is still something that's fresh in people's minds. And
Right.
I guess it hasn't done that well in the box office.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how confirmed that is. I had seen some article that was saying that it hasn't done well, and there's sort of questions about as to why it hasn't done well.
Go wonder.
Yeah, I have theories.
I think the buzz about the like originally in 2019, the buzz about the Ariel being cast as a black person had more kind of virality, if that's a word, than the actual movie itself. Like, what do you think? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's so hard to tell if this is a tactic that Disney is like intending to use.
Mm-hmm.
The quote, any attention is good attention, any
Right.
news is good news.
All news is good news.
And like it's hard to say like, oh yeah, this is really gonna piss people off, so we'll cast Ariel to be a black girl.
Right.
I doubt that. I feel like it's too much of a risk, but I do think that they don't need it to make money.
Mm-hmm.
I think that because they get funding from ESG
Right.
and all the DEI incentives, and it's like
where does
for
ESG
a lot
get all this money, by the way? Because I mean, when you look at all these companies that are going woke, I mean, even Chick-fil-A went woke recently. I mean, more than just recently. I think I can recount woke antics by Chick-fil-A dating as far back as 2015. But that's neither here nor there. Like, why? Like, where does ESG like get all this money from that these large, like multi-million, in some cases billion-dollar corporations are succumbing to?
I don't know. I mean, it could be the
or
government.
Is it just social
could be,
clout?
Yeah,
Like,
I have no clue. I having not looked into it, my theories would be either government or your biggest corporations that are giving money to it. And yeah, I mean, I could theorize all day about where it's coming from, but it's
Right.
I mean, it's probably coming from our pockets technically.
Right.
Oh.
So you've been doing film for how long? Like, you've been in media doing mostly commercials and whatnot, right? Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've done some corporate work. It's mostly, I haven't done many commercials proper. I've done mostly like for companies. I've done like internal marketing stuff, internal pieces of content. But I have done a lot of music videos. I did some mini documentary work here and there, and but I've only been doing it professionally since end of 2017.
Okay.
I should say I've only been doing it full time. I've been doing it for fun since I was probably 13. It's been like 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I mean, so this is your first, feature length film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember like whenever I was watching like one of the early drafts of it, just how well put together it was. Like it's definitely. And I'm not trying to like blow your head up or anything like that, but I'm actually really excited about this film coming out because it's like, I mean, these are the kind of stories, in my opinion, that need to be told. Vanessa is a very interesting person, and she's a walking testimony, which is huge, especially in the culture in which we now find ourselves. And so the fact that you came into her life at the time that you did, and you were able to, in a sense, capture this kind of transition that she made, is very like, this is like, I can't put my finger on it in any other way but God. Talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of like Gothix and the transition she made over the past few years. But before you do answer that question, I did want to play the devil's advocate, if I can. In that, whenever she did what she did in terms of like, being the little child in the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, who calls the Emperor out for being naked. She was the lone voice who stood up and said, guys, what are we like talking about? I mean, she did what she did. She said what she said. She was a voice of reason amongst many who are just chaotic and just completely gone in the head. And because of that, she received a lot of flack. And, to her door came the mob with their pitchforks and their axes. And she was dragged across the social media streets. With that being the case, like to the extent that she delved into Christianity, she basically repented and became like a follower of Christ. What would you say to those who would say, okay, like what she did was a kind of reactionaryism? She drew away from the people who once loved her, and it's to that extent that she now follows God or believes the Bible or whatever. So it's not genuine. It's just that she is, in a sense, being a reactionary to people who basically betrayed her, so to speak. Like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, the accusation of grifter is, I mean, that's her tagline, the problematic grifter, which she took ownership of it for sure. But yeah, that, I think that's a completely valid thing for someone on either side, whether you're on the right, whether you're on the left, to ask, like, is this person genuine in their switch and the way that they view the world? And for Gothix specifically, this was far from automatic. That this was it took a year after her cancellation for her to start to connect the dots, and she was connecting the dots from who it was specifically that had canceled her. It was black leftists that canceled her, and it took a year. It was July of 2019, and then in June of 2020, the BLM riots kick off, and she's looking at the same accounts, the same black leftists that had canceled her were the same people that were justifying something else she didn't agree with, which was the looting, the violence, burning down of private businesses and things like that. It was that connection that caused her to say, like, something is wrong here. These black leftists are supporting, they messed up my life and are supporting something that I see as like wicked. And that, for that full year, she was still a leftist. She was still a Democrat who had Trump derangement syndrome. that is self-proclaimed Trump derangement syndrome, that she could not see through her hatred of Republicans and Christians, and but once she made that logical, reasonable connection that where the problem is coming from, she then decided, I need to look into what the other side is saying. And that was when, well, she discovered Uncle Tom. She discovered a documentary that you were in, Chad. And through that, also just, obviously discovered Thomas Sowell. And it was primarily Sowell's presence in the Uncle Tom 1 documentary that was like really compelling to her, which, I mean, if anyone sees this video that doesn't know about Thomas Sowell, I'm pretty sure everyone in the chat probably does. I would hope so. But if anyone sees this video that hasn't, seen Thomas Sowell, like, he is such a compelling individual, like such a strong mind and an ability to speak well. But it was primarily his inclusion in that documentary that caused her to have that wake up moment. The coming to Christ side of it, that was like another 2 years after that. I guess year and a half, 2 years, somewhere in there. It was a long ride to get there, and a lot of questions and a lot of concerns and a lot of curiosity and investigation. And it was not an automatic thing, but what it was a consideration. And I think when people try to shame somebody for changing their mind, changing their viewpoint, they're shaming them for having considered something and having been convinced by it. That it's like, you should have never even considered it. And it's like, is that a reasonable thing? Is that a reasonable thing to have done, to not consider another position? And but that's what religious institutions do, and that's really what the left is. The right can do this in its own way, but the left is far worse. That it's a religious institution, and not just a religious institution, it edges on cult, because it's like, you must be shamed if you leave this. You must not even look at the opposing side and what they're saying. If you look at the opposing side, then you might be influenced by them. Instead of hearing what they have to say, you must condemn them and shut your ears, put your earmuffs on. And because she didn't do that and spent several years looking into the other side, she was convinced, having grown up on the left. And she doesn't hate people on the left. That's the other thing. It's not, she didn't go from one radical position to another radical position in regards to like hatred. Maybe a radical position in regards to implementation, but it's an easy thing to call someone a grifter, and like, not have any backing or basis to say why they're a grifter. Right. They don't have a basis for saying why she's a grifter. They just say it because it's easy.
What's interesting to me is, like, when you look at, because one of the things that I do with my own content is scrutinize Black culture. And the reason I do that isn't because I'm trying to be a provocateur or I'm trying to hate on anyone. I'm doing it merely as a kind of defense mechanism against this notion that's being pushed in academia and entertainment and the news by educators, so on and so forth, that Black people, by virtue of their being Black, are oppressed by the system, are oppressed by systemic racism, and are oppressed by white folks just naturally because of the fact that we have dark colored skin. And there's so much wrong with that notion. There's so much fallacy and error in that notion. And what I'm trying to communicate with my own platform is that, as people, as human beings, we tend to recoil away from that which we deem degenerate or that which we deem grotesque in a sense. And for all intents and purposes, what we know of as Black culture has been presented as degenerate, as decadent, as frivolous, so on and so forth. And unfortunately, young folks who came up under that culture adopted those relics as kind of their own identity, as their own reality. And so what I try to do with my own content is to expose, like, no, what we're seeing is a cultural issue. It's not a systemic issue. And so it's to that extent that I talk a lot about Black culture. But there's this other dynamic, or this other piece to this whole Black culture thing, where even those who do not practice the relics of what is traditionally, or what is widely understood as Black culture, someone like a Gothix, still kind of identify with it, even though they might not listen to the same music, they might not use the same kind of grammar and terminology, they might not, carry themselves and conduct themselves in the kind of frivolous way that we think Black culture to be. So it's interesting, to see someone like a Gothix who believe the things that Black culture believes about, say, Trump, for example, who believe the things that Black culture believes about, how one must become successful in a Western context, who believe the things about, like, their station and the kind of caste system, which of course there is no caste system in America, but believe that they rank low in the caste system of America, so on and so forth. Talk a little bit about, if you can, or if you feel comfortable.
What are you trying to say? You think I can talk about these incredibly deep?
Well, you're not Vanessa. You're not Gothix. So I'm in a sense asking you to kind of get into her head, but like talk a little bit about. I'm not the one in front of the
camera.
Talk a little bit about, like, from your opinion, why she kind of associated herself with Black culture, only to find out that because she believes the things that she believes, Black culture rejected her. If that makes sense.
Yeah, you cut out there at the beginning of that statement. Sorry, what was the question?
I said to talk a little bit about, from your opinion. I'm not sure why I cut out my internet levels.
Yeah, it's just a couple, like, it was just a couple words, and I missed keywords.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about, like, why, in your opinion, Gothix was, like, she associated with herself or identified with Black culture, even though she herself didn't. Like, she's not what people would typically think of when they think of Black culture in terms of the way she carries herself, how she speaks, so on and so forth. Like, what was the kind of reasoning behind associating herself with Black culture, only to find out that Black culture rejected her simply because she believed certain things that are not that are a no in Black culture? If that question makes sense.
For one, I guess when she was younger, she didn't feel as connected with Black culture. That it was not automatic. It was not a given that she was a part of that. In fact, she received a lot of guff for being in the goth scene, because there aren't really Black people in the goth scene. It was very unusual, and because of that, like, a lot of her Black friends didn't accept her, or just like just Black people that she would run into, she would get made fun of for it. And so she had said that she had, like, felt that from a young age, but as time has gone on, that was 90s, early 2000s, I guess, that she was running into that. And but as time has gone on, like, what's happened with American culture, it has become the color of your skin is the most important quality about you. And that it's pretty easy if you are in, let's say you're not originally accepted by Black culture, even though you are Black. If you are in a leftist household, if you're in a Democrat household, you might not be putting two and two together that, like, Black society expects this of me, and I'm not that way. But my political leanings are telling me that it doesn't matter that, like, that I don't fit into this culture that they say I'm supposed to fit into. Black people are a monolith. And So I guess I'm a part of this. That if you don't feel the disconnect, it's a cognitive dissonance. But she had grown into the place where like much of the white liberal activism comes in, and that being the not that black people aren't social justice warriors, but when we think of social justice warriors, we're generally thinking of the white person. We're generally thinking of the white person with the dyed blue hair, and that whole movement is, again, very much about the importance of the color of your skin. So it was certainly a disconnect, but she aligned with the political stance of the Black American, not the cultural stance of the Black American. That, she didn't glorify crime. She didn't glorify many of the things that are glorified in that, but what she did believe in was the political notions that were being pushed on her about Black people. And it wasn't until just a very small, like, centrist idea of, hey, maybe someone isn't necessarily racist if they prefer the look of the original Ariel. It's like, I prefer Chadwick Boseman to play Black Panther.
Right.
I don't want Chris Pratt to play Black Panther. It doesn't make sense. And I'm not going to call a black person racist for preferring Chadwick Boseman playing Black Panther as opposed to Chris Pratt.
Right.
How
Makes
dare
sense
you
to
have
me.
that preference? And so her statement of this very centrist opinion, it was not a conservative opinion. It was not a right wing opinion. Someone isn't necessarily racist because they prefer the look of this character the way that they were.
Right.
It was the statement of a centrist opinion that had started the fire for her awakening.
It definitely gives you the
it was this
impression like that, leftism, and I think there's some of this on the right too. In fact, I would say that there's a lot of this on the so-called right, but to the extent that a person deviates from the groupthink, they are canceled, lambasted, and all the things. And it's important to see that, especially like, and goes back to, again, why I think this is such an important story with Gothix. It's important to see that, and I hope people see themselves in the whole Gothic story.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's like, when you are able to put your neck out, so to speak, and say, well, I actually don't see it that way. Here's how I see it. Because the individual will always be smarter than the group. Always. So to the extent
it's the Men in Black quote.
Yeah, exactly. Like, to the extent that you put your neck out and you say the common sense thing, you can begin to understand, like, wow, have I been part of a group or part of a cult or part of a thing that was more to my detriment than it was to my benefit? And that kind of has a more liberating effect.
Oh yeah,
because you can begin
absolutely,
like with Gothix, like you can begin to like go down a journey or go down a road of like reflection and realization, and hopefully end up at the foot of the cross. So I mean, again, very, very compelling story.
That was something that I was hoping for from the beginning. I didn't know that she was gonna become a Christian, but before I had before anything was like official, my first thought was like, okay, she's not a Christian, that's clear, but I know there's an opportunity here. And so I prayed for a year. I prayed before we started the project. I prayed well into it, and for a year straight, just about wisdom about what to say and all that. I knew there was an opportunity, but yeah, that's absolutely the hope, is that that as you find some kind of truth, even if it doesn't feel like it is associated at all with God or at all with Jesus Christ, that It is going the love and the excitement and the enjoyment of finding truth that you didn't have before will hopefully lead you down a path of pursuing more and more of it, pursuing more truth, and encountering more and more things that you didn't know were true before.
Right.
And that, like, that seemed to be the thing that drove her, was the, oh wow, I had no clue that I was being lied to about race relations. I had no clue that these things were in place to deceive me. I had no clue. I think completely differently about the world. So I think it was a combination of the pursuit of truth and the enjoyment, having found the enjoyment of finding truth, and depression.
Yeah.
That she was depressed as a liberal, but she was still depressed as a newborn. She doesn't call herself a conservative, but as somebody who walked away from the Democrat Party, she was still depressed having found this truth because of a realization of how messed up everything is. And it's like, she called it, it's the black pill, and she needed the white pill.
With I guess American films being so saturated with a lot of woke, demonic nonsense, how much of a bearing did the quality of the film being able to compete with a lot of the Hollywood grade nonsense that's out there, like how much of a bearing did that have on what you put into making this film?
I mean, a massive amount. That was a one of the original goals, standards, I should say. It's not a goal, it's a standard, that this is my first feature-length film, and I'm a baby when it comes to this stuff, but I have fortunately been in a community and a family of people that, for as long as I can remember, we have discussed the objectivity of beauty, that things are good or they're bad or they're somewhere in between, but that there is an objectivity of beauty, and you can have a beautiful story and ugly visuals, or you can have beautiful visuals and an ugly story. But I discussed for the majority of my life with people that I'm close with, trying to like dissect what it is, knowing that like we're never going to have a complete, full understanding of what it is. That's just the nature of these things. But what you can do is get a little bit closer. And that has been a massive benefit to me, in that I had made the decision that I was not going to release this until I felt that it looked like something that I could encounter on Netflix in regards to like the level of professionalism and the look of production quality, that was a standard. And that being a standard meant that this documentary would take 2.5 years to do, when I'm the only one working on it, basically. But the Lord has like absolutely blessed me with being able to give the time to it. That money has come from places that we would have never anticipated, which has gotten us by, so that I could keep on working on this. If I had to be working other jobs to do this, we would not have what we have now. And I give credit completely to the Lord for that. It's insane.
What do you think that standard is missing from so many conservative or Christian films?
I think it comes from the industry, it's like there shouldn't be something called the Christian industry in my mind. It's like,
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's like you're a Christian making a film, you're a Christian making music, you're a Christian painter, and I would only say it's Christian art if it's on a like biblical story of some kind. It's a spiritual story that has to do with God and Jesus Christ and those things, and those are great. like do those kinds of stories, Christian artists. But that there is an understanding amongst the Christian art industry that all you have to do with Christians is make a thing, say it's Christian, and then you have a whole market that will buy it.
Yeah.
They will buy it. They will listen to it. And it's safe and it's comfortable and it's not scary and risky and it's not different. And it's not good. Most of the time it just sucks. And there's always exceptions. Like I have exceptions of Christian artists that I've listened to that I think are fantastic. But they're exceptions. And Christian artists need to be put in a place where they're surrounded by people that will tell them, lovingly, hopefully, but will tell them that the thing they made sucks. And that is like, it blows, man. And, fix it. And, it can be more constructive than that. It doesn't need to be so harsh, but, to be honest, probably most people don't even have enough of an opinion to be even able to say that something is good or that something is bad or why it's good or why it's bad, which is another thing. But that recognition that as an artist, you're going to make stuff that either sucks or is just so stock. It's just stock. It's standard. It's plain. And the goal, all the other artists that are out there in the liberal world, they're thinking in terms of like making something that's unique and different and exciting and fresh. And Christians are just trying to make something that those people are making.
That's a good point.
And
that's a very good point.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah. It's been my observation that when it comes to like secularists, they are better storytellers when it comes to films. And I don't know, I cringe at the thought of me like saying this, but whenever it comes to like a lot of Christian films that are out there, and I'm just using that for lack of a better word, but when it comes to a lot of that's out there, they feel like it has to be overtly kind of like spiritual, when the reality is and preachy. And it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Like you can deal with kind of the realness and rawness of life and tell a story and have that story kind of undergirded with spiritual elements that are compelling. Because the thing is
110%.
Right. When I think of like my own kind of, being born again story, or, Vanessa's Gothix, or anybody I know who have talked about their being born again, those stories are very interesting and compelling in themselves. And it's such a disconnect from what we see in the way of a lot of quote unquote Christian films that are out there. So a lot of the films aren't really believable, and I'm not trying to hate or throw shade on anyone, but it's just like, I feel like, to your point, as far as like iron sharpening iron within the arts, I feel like, the storytelling needs to be better. It needs to be more compelling. It needs to be more realistic, because people will follow a good story, and that they can relate to, more or less.
The fear I think of much of the Christian industry is that they're going to present something that it's too dark. And it's like, anyone's conversion story should have a deal of darkness in it, that you're being saved from sin. You're being saved from the world, and sin is dark, and the world has a lot of darkness in it. It's not all dark, but it's got a lot of darkness in it. And so you have to present things, at the very least close to the way that they are, if you want it to be something that resonates with people. If it doesn't communicate to somebody that this happened or this could happen, this is reasonable that it could happen. Or I see, if it's a completely made up world, C.S. Lewis, like this is a great example. C.S. Lewis made up a bunch of worlds that are not our world. But it didn't matter because the characters and the ideas and the concepts of good and wrong were so tied into the way that our world actually does work that his space trilogy, completely, non-existent world. The Great Divorce is non-existent world. Narnia is a non-existent world. But these are works that are good, if not great.
Yeah.
They are great.
Yeah.
And that there's this weird fear. I kind of understand it. I want to understand it, but there is a fear amongst Christians of saying things that could be beneficial, but if they're not direct quotes from scripture, that maybe we shouldn't be saying that. Maybe we shouldn't be promoting fiction, even if it's fiction that is so about the glorification of God and His Spirit that it's this maybe we shouldn't do that. I mean, it's the nature of conservatives. They're conservative. They would put off the gas. Hey, don't go so fast. It's a fear of risk. And while I understand that, you have to be promoting. If you've got kids, conservatives, if you've got kids out there that don't have conservative personalities, I don't mean politics, I mean personalities. They're more artistic, they're more creative, they're looking to make things. Encourage them towards it. Encourage them towards goodness. Encourage them towards righteousness. Teach them about those things. But my goodness, encourage them to try things.
Right.
Or let them try things creatively. Let them try things. It's scary.
And let them fail.
It's scary. Yeah.
And
let them fall.
Right. And be constructively critical and guide them and foster them in the right direction. Absolutely. I mean, we're teaching our kids. So we homeschool our kids. My wife, she does all the homeschooling. Yeah. We have 4 kids, and we're very much using a classical kind of curriculum because we want to teach our kids, the objective attributes of the world. We want to also teach them that which is true, that which is beautiful, that which is good, that which is, God honoring. We want to lay that foundation, and once that foundation is laid, from there they can be creative and build in life from a basis, from a premise of that which is objectively true, that which is objectively good, that which is objectively beautiful. And I feel like with our public school system today, it's very much a kind of free-for-all because it's predicated on a secular worldview that's fluid, that's subjective. And, the kids are being churned out as young adults. And the only thing that's bred out of that is chaos. And the world in which we live, I mean, the thing is, you can't expect a fallen world that doesn't know God to live as if they know God, to conduct themselves as if they know God. You can't. And so I'm not over here saying that, why are people so evil and why, do all these things happen? I know full well why these things happen, but at the same time, those of us who are Christians, those of us who profess to be Christians, to the extent that we have kids and we're fostering and raising these kids, we do need to be intentional about fostering their talents, fostering their skills in such a way that when they come of age, to the extent that they go out into the world and they produce and they create, they can do so from a posture of knowing who God is and knowing what truth is, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, before you go out into the world, you're a kid and you've grown up in a Christian home. Before your kids go out into the world, you had a bunch of time with them in the home where you were able to influence them in some way. And some of the questions that come into mind is your life righteous? What do they see? when they see you? Do they see somebody who is living righteously? Do they see somebody who they want to be like because they see your goodness? And it's a genuine question of all Christians, of every single Christian. Ask yourself that. Do your children see somebody who is righteous, who is living in a way that pleases God, somebody they want to be like? If they do, they've got more of a reason to, when they are given the freedom to go out into the world and make their own decisions, because they will make their own decisions. That day is coming. You can have more confidence that they're going to make good decisions, righteous decisions, because you've been who you have ought to have been for the sake of them.
Wow.
And it's like, are you living righteously in your home? Not are you just preaching righteousness to your kids? It's, are you living righteously? If you're just preaching righteousness to your kids and everything's messed up, then you have no expectation that your kids are going to turn out the way that they should, because you haven't been a good example. And I had a very blessed upbringing, that I was given a lot of freedom at a young age about what I did. And I had so much respect for my father, and I had so much respect for my mother and love for her, that I wanted to do the right thing. I had, become a Christian at a young age, but I was allowed to go to the skate park by myself. I was allowed to listen to whatever music I wanted to listen to. I was allowed to watch rated R movies. I was allowed to do these things. But before we got there, I had talks with my dad. I saw who he was. It was primarily my father who was this influence. And he lived the way that he ought to have. And I was given freedom simultaneously. And that has turned into something, I have not seen it many places, and I'm so unbelievably grateful for it. I just want to tell other Christian parents out there that, like, it works, and it does something, and it can work miracles in your children and what they end up doing. But God gave us freedom to choose him or not. And parents have to do the same thing. They don't get to be more controlling than God is.
Right.
God's given us freedom to choose heaven or hell, to choose him or Satan, to choose ourselves or the Lord.
Yeah.
And parents, like, be the example, encourage them towards righteousnness, and give freedom. Pray for wisdom. Pray for wisdom about how much freedom you give them. Maybe you don't hand them a heroin needle. I trust my kid,
Yeah, because I mean, some people take that to extremes, and they don't realize they're extremes because they're influenced by secular society. For example, I know that there have been Christian parents, for example, who, once their daughters are teenagers, they say, well, Susie, I don't want you having sex, but if you do, here's a condom. Like, there's Christian parents who do this, and so it's like what in the world are you doing? You know what I mean? But what I like about what you said is, like, to the extent that you watch rated R movies as a teenager and so on, like, because that foundation was laid by your parents in a loving and graceful way, like, you had a foundation by which to process what you were seeing. Whereas a lot of kids, unfortunately, watch these films, and their little minds are being shaped by what they're seeing, because unfortunately, a lot of parents have punted the responsibility of being authoritative in their children's life to the public school system, to Hollywood, films or whatever. They don't understand just how much influence Hollywood has in their home by way of the television screen, or by way of Spotify, or by way of whatever the case may be. I mean, I mentioned to you, I think in the green room before we went live, that black culture, like, it's not a real thing. It's this thing that was made in a Hollywood basement. You know what I mean? And so unfortunately, a lot of black youth have adopted this culture as their identity or as their own, to the extent that another young black kid in school don't dress the way that is, you know, that is understood as black culture, or don't talk the way or whatever, or don't, you know, or enjoys reading or whatever the case may be, that kid is made fun of for acting white. You know what I mean? And so it's like, these concepts don't come from any real place other than this kind of concoction, this kind of fabrication. And it's important that we as parents really instill values in the lives of our children, in the hearts of our children, because it's
by the way that we live.
Right, by the way that we live, and by what we say, and by what we do, and practicing what we preach, so to speak.
Amen.
So
Amen.
as far as like, you know, you're being a filmmaker, like, I'm excited to see all the projects that come down the pipeline. As far as you're concerned, like, for me, I think I got lucky when it was more God's providence, but I think I got lucky in that I was minding my own business, running my company, and out of nowhere, Justin Malone decided to call me and say, "Hey, we're making a film about black conservatives. Do you mind sitting down and doing an interview?" And when he did that, like, there was a lot of thoughts that ran through my mind. One was, okay, like, I at the time understood filmmaking to be like a leftist thing, a kind of demonic thing. Not to the extent that, oh, all films are demonic, but to the extent of, like, you know, Hollywood is a cesspool, and a lot of the filmmakers are a product of that, and they're just basically pumping this propaganda, and this could, for all intents and purposes, be a exploitative film that seeks to make fun of black conservatives. So I kind of like was on edge, not on edge, but I was skeptical of what it was they were trying to do. I didn't know who Justin Malone was, but I agreed to partake in it. Him and writer Ansel came to my my plumbing shop here in Dallas. They sat down, they asked really good questions. The interview went really well, and it was just natural. Justin is a phenomenal interviewer. It's conversational. He can get real moments out of people, and it doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel forced. You're just having a conversation, and he has an eye for, you know, for what works. And by the time he puts these things together, it's a masterpiece in motion. And so the reason I say I got lucky is that, like, again, when you compare Uncle Tom to a lot of documentaries out there that talk about the same subject matter, Uncle Tom and Uncle Tom 2 are obviously the superior film. And I'm not saying that just because I'm in it. I'm saying that objectively speaking, like, these are compelling films. I mean, if you look at the reviews from people who are watching these films to this day, they are saying things like, wow, this is life-changing. It's life-changing because of the substance, but it's also life-changing because, like, it takes you along for a ride. Like, when you sit down and you watch the film, like, you're just along for the ride, and you're not being, like, overly critical of the way in which the film was made, because you're following along with the story. And that's what I think films are supposed to do. To see,
just put so much quality into it. Like, I mean, you guys did an absurd amount of research for that, for Uncle Tom 2 specifically. But, like, that is, it is an amazing on the research level, but seeing the care in the cut and then the care in the soundtracking, like, oh my gosh. I mean, Justin's told me about, like, what it takes to soundtrack these films. And it's a lot more than I did for mine. I mean, I have people soundtracking the Gothix documentary, but it is, I mean, basically 100% of Uncle Tom is soundtracked. Both of them, right? Like, there's, like, no spot where there isn't soundtrack of some kind. And dude, that is insane effort.
Shout out to Damon Criswell, who scored both films.
And it's awesome. It's so good. But like, that makes it a unique film, and that unique quality makes it stand out, and it makes it extra compelling. Like you're saying, it it pulls you along. It takes you along. It doesn't. Yeah. It helps you all the way to get there. And
Right.
It's beautiful. Great.
Well, the point of me like bringing, Justin up or what have you is to say that like I feel like there is this thing happening where the bar is being raised for making good quality films that are not tainted with this kind of demonic woke agenda. And I'm excited to see you in this space and hearing your thoughts about like how much quality should be prioritized in the making of a film. And again, I'm excited to see more of your work, but I'm also excited for Gothix as well, because she is a serious person. She's very funny and she's very wise. But I think like having a film in your kind of portfolio, so to speak, also does something within our cultural context to like raise the bar in terms of like what else you can produce and what else you can do.
I hope so. I mean, for one, I think the most important thing for Christians in whatever it is that they do, if they're an artist or whatever else, if they're a plumber, they're a carpenter, you should care about what it is you made. You should care about making it good. You should care about making it great. Make it good, make it great. Get the skills that allow you to make something uniquely beautiful. And it pleases God. It pleases God. Do not get lazy in the growing of your skill set. That is, if you believe in the objectivity of the beauty of creation, then you should be pursuing the objectivity of beauty in the things that you do.
Right.
And that takes work. It takes so much flippin' work to do. And people are like, they basically don't believe it's an achievable thing to create something beautiful, or uniquely beautiful, however you want to say it. They just don't believe it's achievable, and so they don't try.
Yeah.
And so they're like, I'll get by doing what I can, and without expanding what can is. They don't expand what their level of ability is. Like, I can do this right now, so I guess I'll do this for the rest of my life. And that is just a terrible, potentially ungodly. I think it depends on the subject. It depends on what it is, but probably in a lot of circumstances, an ungodly way to look at your life and the service that you can do.
Right.
And make something good because it pleases God. You have to spend a lot of time figuring out how to make something good. It takes a lot of work to figure out how to make something good. But if you put that work in, you make something good, and you then can credit God and say, I did this for him. I did this for him.
So whenever we released Uncle Tom 2, most of the feedback that we got was overwhelmingly positive. And I would chalk the positivity of the reaction up to, as I alluded to earlier, the way that the film moves and unfolds and how real it is in terms of like, we're being objective about the history that we are unearthing, but at the same time, we're giving you a glimpse of present culture and the way in which present culture is reminiscent of this kind of long in the making demoralization that has taken place in Western culture. And with that comes all the ugly. I mean, in the film, there is cussing, there is degeneracy and decadence. And underneath all that is this calling to come back to God. Because what we're displaying is, Black society or Black America was at its best and brightest when it was Christ-centric. It was going to church overwhelmingly. It was raising up the children within the context of a two-parent household. It wasn't until, once again, the demoralization was vamped up around the civil rights movement, and then thereafter that you saw this cultural decline, particularly as it relates to Black America. And that's not to say that all Black Americans practice Black culture, but they co-sign it in terms of identifying with it. Like if voting is any kind of barometer for how one identifies himself, the fact that 90+% of Blacks vote for Democrat politicians tells me everything I need to know, even though most Black people aren't living the kind of degenerate and decadent lifestyles that Black culture tells us we are. So with that being said, because we had the realness and the rawness within the film with the cussing and things like that, there were a couple of people who wrote in and said, while I enjoyed the film, as a Christian, I can't show this to my kids because it has cussing in it. Do you think that as far as the consumer or the viewer is concerned, that we kind of stymied or we kind of get in our own way, so to speak, in terms of making good art? And I think you alluded to this earlier when I forget how you worded it, but do you think we kind of get in our own way in terms of being effective and influential in the culture with a positive message because we put certain restrictions on what we do? I mean, because in our film, we weren't promoting cussing. We weren't promoting decadence and degeneracy. We're showing you the kind of net result of this kind of ideology. Like, it's good to see that, so you can then juxtapose it against, that which is objectively good.
Yeah, the phrase that I'd use is darkness. That, like, darkness is in the story, and you're not, by having cussing in a film, you're not promoting darkness. You're showing darkness. You're not promoting it. I mean, Uncle Tom 2 also has footage of people being killed, executed in the street, and that is really heavy stuff. The Gothix documentary does not have people getting killed in the street. Well, I know. I guess it's never mind. I mean, not the clip of it, but the aftermath. I take that back. But I don't even know my own film, I guess. But the point being is that, like, if you read Judges in Scripture, it's not promoting the things that happen in Judges. It's telling you what happened. It's telling you what happened. Like, you have to have context here that, like, these things happened. It's like, oh, I didn't want to hear about that. You made me really uncomfortable. I can't read Judges to my children. I didn't want to I didn't want to hear about that. And it's just like, it is this oversensitivity that you've got to get over. And that it's not about trying to scare your children. It's not about trying to put something in their life that's going to, traumatize them in some way or encourage them towards that kind of behavior. Because it should come, if it's coming from somewhere, it should come from a parent that is confident and calm and at peace about the truth. That kids are looking at how are mom and dad responding to this, and if they're calm and then they talk about it after the fact or before, in a way that is level-headed, but not denying anything that happened, that is going to go a great distance for your children, to be able to be in the world and not be traumatized by it. You're told not to fear people who can only kill the body.
Right.
And so, if we're talking about killing, I mean, there's all sorts of other things you shouldn't be fearing as well. Fear the Lord. But to be able to create, or to be able to bring up children that are able to go out into the world and be a greater influence on it than it is on them, is not automatic. It's not, I'm not saying it's obvious, but what I am saying is that every Christian has resources. And the biggest resource that every Christian has is the Holy Spirit. And first, be righteous. Get righteous yourself. If you're not, confess, repent, ask the Lord to forgive you for it, and sin no more. Then from there, in regards to how you're going to lead your children, pray for wisdom. James chapter 1 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, that you can pray for it, and it will be given to you if you do not doubt. If you do not doubt, that you can ask the Lord for wisdom, and He will give it to you. You have to do it regularly. This is case by case basis. You don't pray it once and you're done for your life. But that is going to help in bringing your children up and not putting this inordinate fear of the world. They can't hear cussing. They can't see violence. They can't. We can't talk about sex. There is a balancing game that goes on with these things. I'm not saying that the way that you present to our children is obvious, clear, up front. But if you're giving it to the Lord, He's going to give you the guidance that you need. But when it comes down to it, we would not know what we know about God saving people from great wickedness if we didn't know what the wickedness was. If you don't know what the wickedness is, you don't know what God is saving people from.
That's a great point. It's a fantastic point.
It's messed up. People do messed up things, and the Lord saves them from those things. Or they choose their own path and receive their judgment.
100%. The last question I wanted to ask before I got to some of the comments that came in was, so you guys are releasing the film through Lure. Explain what Lure is and how it works.
Yes, we have to do that. Thank you for reminding me. So Lure, if many of you are probably, I don't know many, but people are probably hearing it for the first time. Lure, that's LOOR .TV. Lore.tv. This is a new Christian streaming platform that is basically working against everything that we just talked about. That in the same way that we want to have it be worked against. It is incentivizing Christian artists to create things that are objectively beautiful, or at least more beautiful. At the very least, more beautiful. Many of you know the state of Christian film and TV. A lot of the time it's just not very good. It's not cared for. It's a money grab. Lure is a platform that is a combination of a streaming platform and a crowdfunding platform. So Netflix and Kickstarter. And the way that it works is you subscribe to Lure with your dollars. They give you something called loot when you do. And you put that loot into projects that you want to see get made. That is the way that we are funding the release of the Gothix documentary. The only way that the Gothix documentary is going to get out there is if people subscribe to lore.tv and put their loot into the Gothix documentary. That's the only way. But the goal of Lore, by subscribing to Lore, you are not just coming there to come and support the Gothix documentary. It is funds and resources that's going into a platform that is about making beautiful things and changing the culture. And it's also not just the Christian version of Netflix. It's not just the Christian version of Kickstarter. They're trying to do something that is innovative, that isn't being done anywhere else. One of the reasons that I think that many of the Christian alternative platforms to various social media sites, that they don't succeed, or the conservative versions of those sites, the reason that they don't succeed is because they're just the conservative version of that thing, or they're just the Christian version of that thing. And the same reason that Christian rock is generally not very good is because it calls itself Christian rock. It's not trying to create something new. It's just copying somebody else.
Yeah.
Lore is presenting a concept that, as far as I am aware, has yet to be done for film and television. And that is the combination of the crowdfunding platform and the streaming platform. Once it's been funded on Lore, it goes live on Lore. So for the early subscribers, they are primarily investing in Lore. You don't have a lot of shows to watch yet, but that is the nature of a platform that's just starting. As time goes on, more shows get funded, they go live, and everyone with a Lore subscription can watch whatever has been funded in the past. So as time goes on, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you want to support that now, we absolutely need your help. Lore, that's LOOR.TV. I'll type it in the chat so you can go there. But sign up you get loot once a week, and you can spend that loot on whatever you want. You should spend it on the Gothix documentary.
Lore.com/TV, right?
Actually, not .com. Not .com.
Lore.
I got it. I'll type it in. It's just lore.tv.
Lore.tv. Gotcha.
Yeah. Why is it doing this? I know technology. Yep. There we go. Lore.tv. I don't know. It doesn't look like it's made it a link in there. I don't think it recognizes it as a link.
I'll put it in the description also for those to come back and watch this live. So
go up in your URL bar and type lore.tv.
So we got one from Oh Really. They asked opinion on the Blackening film. Thoughts?
I just saw the trailer for this like maybe an hour before this podcast started. And I don't know much about it, honestly. I know it's by Lionsgate. And I couldn't tell if it is pro black culture or a satire on black culture, or if it's a combination of the two. That I think it can be a satire on black culture and still be overall pro black culture.
Yeah, Lionsgate. I don't know. We also have a super sticker from Silver Phantom X, so thank you for that. No more supers, so let's see if any questions came through. If you guys have a question for Mr. Graeme, feel free to put it in now. Let's see here.
My phone just died, so I don't see chat. Right.
So we got Party of Two. It said the story I hear most frequently from people who left the church is that they saw the hypocrisy in their religious homes or in the lives of other Christian kids.
Other Christians. Kids follow your actions, not your words.
Sorry, my this print is very small on my screen, so I have to struggle with these sentences.
It's all right.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. Hence the importance that I was really laying into. That I think the reason that myself and my siblings turned out as adults that followed God and didn't have a period of rebellion. We did not have a period of rebellion in our lives, and we had tons of freedom. I think the primary reason was that my parents were living righteously, that they weren't talking about one thing and living the other way. We're just reading in Romans that it goes down this list of speaking to the Jews, like, do you preach against stealing and yet do you steal? Do you preach against all these different things and yet do you do it? You are the reason that the Gentiles blaspheme the living God, or something along those lines. They're basically saying that, like, you guys being hypocrites is the reason why the Gentiles blaspheme the name of God. And that, parents, don't don't be like they were. Don't be hypocrites. If you've got something in your life that you've got to get worked out, be humble and get it worked out. The Lord will forgive you. And read your Bible, pray, do all the things. But for confirmation here, this is not about works righteousness. This is not about, if you just go to church and if you just pray a bunch and, read your Bible, it's taken care of. It's, you have to get on your knees and repent, genuinely. Admit you're wrong. Ask the Lord for forgiveness. And then after you've been forgiven, ask for strength. Ask for strength to do the right thing. And then when you're tempted, ask for strength to resist the temptation and be righteous. I'm not saying it's automatic. It's not. But if righteousness was automatic, then everyone would do it. And everyone does not do it. So recognize this is not automatic. And you have to make a decision. You have to make a choice. Your kids will benefit massively. I feel like this has been like half a parenting podcast now that I think about it.
Amen. So we got one from Frank Berry. He says,
that's my father-in-law. Speaking of parenting.
He says, since you mentioned C.S. Lewis, consider the abolition of man. We are in the day of the conditioners.
Yeah.
Children are being conditioned by media, music, etc., to adopt a new value system. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I have not actually read The Abolition of Man. I have been in many conversations where it has been discussed. But I mean, this is not untrue. At least what I'm seeing by the description of what a conditioner is. It's like, it comes down to, if you're an absent parent, then your children will be raised by something other than you. They get raised by something. Romulus and Remus were raised by wolves. Your children will be raised by the television. They'll be raised by your phone, by your iPad, whatever it may be. If you are not present, and that just means that you have to make sacrifices. That you, the favorite Thomas Sowell quote is, "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." I mean, that is a world-changing quote in my mind, but that is a something that every person has to realize, especially you parents out there, you Christian parents out there, to recognize that if you're going to raise your children right, that you have to give up something else to do it.
100%.
Like, yeah, you got to give up time. You got to give up maybe this particular kind of pursuit. Maybe you have to give up money to do it. Like, whatever it is, you've got to give up something in order to do the right thing. And it's a loss. They are like, that's a sacrifice. Sacrifice is a loss. And be comfortable with the loss, because you know that the thing that you're gaining is greater.
100%.
Yeah.
Teach 'em Chuck says, has anyone seen the trailer for They Cloned Tyrone?
No. I love the name though.
Thomas Berry, Graeme, what's your secret to your follicle gains? You got some luscious locks under that hat.
I don't think they're luscious. They're chaotic. They're all over the place. My secret is not caring. And my number two, growing up in skate park culture, where if you had long hair, it was a mess. And that's just me, I look in the mirror, when I see messy hair Graeme, I see myself.
Nice. All right, we'll take one more. Also from Thomas Berry, what are the biggest things you learned in the documentary making process?
Man, it's a good question. I mean, for one, I was so overly confident about timeline that when we first started shooting it, when we first started shooting it, we had gone out to Rhode Island, where Vanessa and Saul are, where Gothix is, and we filmed for a week. And at the end of that week, we went live on her channel to make an announcement that we were shooting this documentary and we were about to start, working on it. Start editing it. And at that time, I had told her chat that I was like, I think I'll probably have something that's like watchable, like maybe close to done by like September, maybe October of 2021. And I was just so wrong. I was so wrong. And that, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned has been, I mean, I might have been able to do something like that if I had a team of people that I was paying to accomplish it with me. But it's been, other than my business partners helping me film the thing, it's been me editing it. And so, yeah, that's why it's taken 2.5 years, is because I don't have money to pay anybody else. So I got to do it myself. And that takes flipping forever.
Yeah. Money is an interesting tool, very necessary tool.
Ecclesiastes. I mean, well, from one part of scripture, it says the love of money is the root of all evil. But Ecclesiastes says money answers everything.
Yeah, it has a strange way of getting things done. I can attest to that, working in films myself. So my guest has been Graeme Wilson. His film Gothix is about to be released, is on the precipice of being released. You can go and support it at loot.tv. You can buy, or lure.tv. You can buy Loot to support. That's right. Support the film. So do go do that. I'm going to do that this weekend. And I'm going to encourage people on my Sunday show to go do that, because, again, I think that more people need to know who Gothix is. They need to hear her story. And I'm hoping that they see themselves in her story. Detach yourself from whatever groupthink, whatever cult you may be in that you don't realize that you're in, whether that be a political party, whether that be anything, any kind of centralized or decentralized thing that you've been conditioned to believe by the culture, by mainstream media, by your school or your college or what have you. Be an individual. Be an individual who follows God. God's gift of salvation is for you. God literally put on flesh, came down, died on a cross for you to have a connection with him. And then he rose again 3 days later, having victory, emerging triumphant over the grave. And so we have every reason to cling to him. And I feel like, when I hear Gothix speak, whether it be on Twitter or on her YouTube channel or on her IG, like, it literally gives me chills, because again, it's this reminder of how good God is. Like, again, like anytime I see somebody who have come out of the darkness into the light, like, that's a beautiful thing. That's a miraculous thing. And it's for that reason that I, for one, am excited to see this film. So again, if you don't already, do follow Graeme Wilson. He's on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
I mean, I'm bad at Twitter. It's Gramistan. That's Gram Istan.
Gramistan. Nice.
Yeah, Gramistan. But I think people would probably do better to follow me on Instagram, which is Cracker Graham, with no E in Cracker.
Sweet.
Yeah, Cracker Graham.
Right. Go buy some loot. We'll see you guys next time.
Do it.
Peace.
Bye.